Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily's. We're calling our readings through all of the 1,775 poems of the Johnson edition of the poems of Emily Dickinson. We turned out to poem 83, Heart Not So Heavy as Mine. This is an interesting poem for a number of reasons. It is another one of our theodicies, as we call it, this question of why must there be pain and suffering in the world? We're going to look at word choice. We're going to hear a lot of interesting words in this poem that tell us the state of mind of Emily. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you have been introduced to our introductory set of comments. I mentioned theodicy, our big five, the last of our big five. I'm also hopeful that you've been working with the preceding 82 poems. We just finished with Whose Cheek Is This? Now, we know that this poem was sent to at least two folks. One of them was Sam Boyles, who, as we commented already, he was the editor of the Springfield Republican, came into the life of Emily Dickinson sometime in June of 1858, and he's forever going to be an important part of Emily's life. There are some scholars who will argue that, in fact, Emily most loved Boyles of everyone. She wanted his approval. She longed for his approval. It isn't totally clear why this poem was sent to Boyles, other than to say maybe, I am upset and I'm hopeful for relief. Here's the way she says it. Heart, not so heavy as mine, wending late home. As it passed my window, whistled itself a tune, a careless snatch, a ballad, a ditty of the street. Yet, to my irritated ear, an anodyne so sweet, it was as if a bobolink sauntering this way caroled and paused and caroled and bubbled slow away. It was as if a chirping brook upon a dusty way set bleeding feet to minuets, without the knowing why. Tomorrow, night will come again, perhaps weary and sore, bugle, by my window, I pray you, pass once more. Now, again, with so many of Emily's poems, it's not always clear that Emily is the speaker in the poem. She could just be talking about how she's sitting in a room, she hears someone or something making music outside. It can be whistling, it could be a bird singing or whatever, and it lifted her heart, and it allowed her to get through the rest of her day. Notice all of the heavy words. Heart, not so heavy as mine. In other words, clearly, her heart is heavy. And then the word wending is an interesting word, kind of like winding slowly along, wending late home. As, notice it's it. It's interesting that it's not he or she if it's going to be somebody whistling. It passed my window, whistled itself a tune. Now again, is this a human being? Is this a bird? Perfect, Emily, we just don't know. Although, she will say about this that it was as if a bobolink, a bird, so it almost makes it seem like maybe this was a human who was kind of just walking past and was whistling. A careless snatch, again from heavy to careless snatch. And then it's a ballad, it's a ditty. And yet to my irritated ear, so she goes from being heavy to irritated, an anodyne so sweet. Now, she will use this word anodyne 3 more times. In poem 536, she'll say it this way, the heart asks pleasure first, and then excuse from pain, and then those little anodynes that deaden suffering. Then in poem 755, she'll interestingly mention a bobolink. No bobolink reverses singing. When the only tree ever reminded occupying by the farmer bee, clove to the root, his spacious future, best horizon gone, whose music be his only anodyne, brave bobolink. And then finally, in poem 1737, we're going to hear it this way. Love that never leaped its socket, trust entrenched in narrow pain, constancy through fire awarded, anguish bare of anodyne. This idea that it's kind of, silly and it's not going to cause any kind of pain or suffering, anodyne. And then she'll say, it was as if, and she uses this twice, this construction, as if a bobolink, go back to poem 81, of course, she's used bobolink's one of her favorite birds, right? Sauntering is an interesting word when you mix it with wending. Sauntering this way, caroled and paused and caroled, right? Now, this is wonderful because to me, it almost sounds like a bird, or someone who is whistling to sound like a bird, where you're caroling, then you pause, then you're caroling again, and then bobbled slow away. And then from there, she goes to another simile about a brook. It was as if a chirping brook, notice that we go to now careless snatches to chirping brook, but now we're back to word choice. Dusty way, set bleeding feet to minuets. Wow, what an amazing image. It's almost as if someone who's walking without shoes or sandals or whatever has their feet really badly jacked up and their feet are bleeding, and then all of a sudden they just start dancing. It's an amazing image. Without the knowing why. And it's the without the knowing why that for me, with an exclamation point, that to me is the heart of the poem. In other words, it isn't abundantly clear. This will take us back to Shelley's To a Skylark. Will I think argue that that poem stands in large measure, we've given full lectures on it at learnstrong.net, stands behind a poem like this. That is to say, all of a sudden the singing, the whistling, whatever it is, the tune, the ballad, whatever it is that she's hearing, now all of a sudden is beyond explanation as to why it is that they're doing, but it doesn't matter. And this is, of course, always going to be the part of art. It's like those of us who love to study and read Emily's poetry. Like, why? Why are you spending so much time? Well, there's the line, without the knowing why. We don't need to know why. We just know that we enjoy these poems the way that she enjoys whatever whistling is happening outside of her window. And then she'll go to tomorrow. Tomorrow. And I think she learned how to use tomorrow from her study of Shakespeare, especially Macbeth. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in its petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. This idea, when Macbeth speaks those lines in 5-5, that it is dreary, weary. I think she understands this. Tomorrow, night will come again. Of course, we could be speaking symbolically of night. And then she uses one of her favorite words, perhaps. You'll remember that we've already said that when we get to poem 696, she'll say it, acres of perhaps. Perhaps, weary and sore, so we're back now to heavy and all of that. Weary and sore, and then she'll say it with the dash. Bugle. So notice it goes from ballad to bugle. By my window I pray, I hope, you pass once more. Notice it's not it pass once more, but you pass once more, which is obviously intriguing because she sent the poem to Boyle. So she actually addressing Goyle's metaphorically. In other words, when you give me a compliment, it is like, about my writing, it is like someone walking by my window and whistling. Well, what am I going to do with a poem like this at 2A? Well, I think the argument that's being made here is that everyone needs solace from pain, and that art often is what provides it, even though we don't know why. It's translinguistic. At 2B, I love the word choice of anodyne, that inoffensive kind of a moment. And I love all of the other words, heavy and careless and irritated and dusty and bleeding and weary and sore, all these kind of hard words, depressing kind of words. At 3A, well, I mentioned Shelley's To a Skylark. Obviously, I could mention, you'll remember that in Shelley's Ode to the West Wind, he says that he feels like one who has been bowed and weary, a heavy weight of hours. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net if you want to run that one to the ground. I also like Keats's Upon First Looking into Chapman's Homer. You'll remember that. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies when a new planet swims into his kin. Or like Stalactortes when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. What's he say? He says, reading a good book, kind of like Emily hearing this whistle, awakens in him a certain kind of awe that is kind of like, he said Cortez, he meant Balboa, when Balboa's men are standing there at Darien looking out onto the Pacific Ocean for the first time, and it just kind of blows them away. Finally, at 3B, it's amazing to me how a little poem like this can open up once we start reading it, and it asks this question maybe. What was a time when your spirits were lifted and you found yourself hoping for the next whistle tomorrow, like we hope for the next poem of Emily's tomorrow? Thank you.